Hello everyone, Lee Henson here, president and founder of AgileDad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. So without any further ado, let's get started. One of the things that was brought to my attention from a student in a class that I'm currently teaching, I'm actually teaching a class as we speak, was that, we were talking about the different certifications and the different scaling practices and the differences between applying XP principles or Kanban principles or whatever the case may be, right, to comparing it to Scrum principles and which certifications have the greatest impact in the marketplace and how do I know which classes to take and, organizations and how they look at it and how can we get leadership to really believe in education being a key to being success. And one of my students, Amy, she brought this up, and she says, sometimes organizations are so focused on crap that's exactly what happens. And I'm like, what do you mean by crap? And she says, I can't realize a profit. That it doesn't matter what they do, that the organization just can't get ahead. They can't build the right products or services. They're not focused on that target user or end persona. So I've decided that, after thinking about it, that maybe it's time for me to come up with my own certification. Yeah, I can make it an AgileDad certification. And what I'm going to call it is I'm going to call it a CRAPPIE Agile Certification, CRAPPIE, where you too can earn your certification to become a certified realist of Agile principles, practices, implementation, and evaluation. That way you can get a CRAPPIE certificate and have a CRAPPIE certification, because the truth is, it doesn't matter what education you have or what certification you have. If the instructor that imparts that information on you doesn't have real-world experience or isn't able to tell you how to apply it, you could have all the education in the world and no application practice and end up with a really crappy Agile implementation. So that begs the question, how do I get away from having a crappy Agile implementation? And the answer's simple. Don't go for crappy certifications. I've seen so many things out there that are just bewildering to me. They blow my mind, right? And even things from large organizations. I want to make sure I point that out. So, for example, if you were doing the PMI approach to Agile, the Disciplined Agile Delivery Approach, they came out with a really cool document called Choose Your WOW, a Disciplined Agile Delivery Approach for optimizing your way of working. Sounds great to me. And then I looked at the top and I was on page number 1 of 451. 451 pages on how to do Agile. The latest Scrum Guide is 13 pages. That just blew my mind. I'm like, why would I need a handbook? I mean, heaven forbid if I had the whole thing. But a handbook is supposed to be something that's a small, consolidated, or condensed version of how to do this. It's your small guide to getting things done. And oh my goodness, 451 pages later, I don't know what I would do. I think I'd jump off a cliff, only to discover that they had another group that didn't want to be outdone. There's a group called Scrum Study, and in honor of PMI and the PMBOK, they recently released a document called the Scrumbok, a guide. So once again, we're back at a guide. It's a guide to the Scrum body of knowledge. Thank goodness this is the 3rd edition, it says. And it includes 2 chapters about scaling Scrum for large projects in the enterprise. Sounds great. And so once again, I look at the top and I realize that Scrum Study, who claims to be targeting success, that's their mantra, has delivered a comprehensive guide to deliver projects using Scrum. And this document is 403 pages long. Look, I'm going to call it like I see it. Tridabesh, I love you. Scott Ambler, you might be a good person, but wow. Anytime you need more than 400 pages to explain something to somebody, that's where I cry foul. That's where I feel like we need to be doing something different. I've provided lots of little handbooks and guides and tidbits and comic books, and I think the longest one's like 17 pages or 18 pages. I might have one that hits 20, but I've never gone to 100 pages for anything. My thought is if you need 100 pages to explain something, it's probably not that Agile at all, or you're probably trying to be too rigid, or you're probably trying to be too prescriptive. I think that the key to applying Agile and Scrum successfully into organizations is to really understand what the end user needs, but also to really understand what you're trying to do as an organization. And I think that if you can't realize a profit, that's a clue. Amy, you're onto something. That's a clue. If your company's constantly just building crap for the sake of building crap, you're never going to realize a profit. You're never going to get ahead. It's just one of these things where, wow, it just hit me like a ton of bricks when she said it. I'm like, you couldn't be more correct. This is one of those topics where, I made fun of it, of course, with the CRAPPIE certification. But if any of you really do want a CRAPPIE certificate, I can make one in a PDF and put your name on it and send it to you. Just as a bonus, just so you could say you have another certificate and you could say that you have a CRAPPIE Agile certification, because I think that should be, something that stands in the forefront. But I also think that there's power in the right certifications, with the right instructors, with the right level of knowledge, with the right things that you're learning. What I'm saying is, I'm not trying to brag on myself. There are lots of really great instructors out there. But if you go to a class where you have someone that puts you through the real world scenarios and leaves you better off than you were when you got there, it's an opportunity for you to grow as an individual. It's an opportunity for you to get a better understanding of the intricacies of what you can do to make a difference in the Agile community. And it chills me to the core to think that people are going to just think that because they're cranking out a lot of crap, they're being agile and they're scaling and they're doing great, and they get a CRAPPIE certification and they have that sage on the stage to run the show, as Casey said. Yes, you got to get past having just one person to run the show. You got to get to the point where you've got a clear understanding of what it means to have all of this in line and how it's going to impact your company. And most of all, I think, if you stay away from the crap and you start doing what makes sense, it's going to make you better, it's going to make your organization better, and it's just going to make the world a better place. So my idea is, cut the crap. If you're going to scale, descale. If you're going to do things better, make a difference, find a way. And most importantly, here in the U.S., today is Tuesday. It is election day. So if you're here in the United States, I encourage you to get out and vote, speak your voice, because if you don't, somebody else will. That concludes today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, we encourage you to visit AgileDad.com, where you can learn more about this topic and plenty others. Until next time, stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. And do take care.